Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Meghna Gangwani, co-founder of Plootus, a fintech platform focused on making financial planning more accessible through technology. We'll explore how tools like the Plootus 401k calculator are helping to democratize planning. Meghna, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here today.
Thank you, Tony. Great to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story and what inspired you to launch Plootus?
Thank you. So I'll start by saying that the origin story isn't, from the garage to a giant tale, but it does have, some humble and purposeful beginnings. Sunil Gangwani is actually the founder of Plootus. He's a finance professional. And even before he founded the company, he was helping friends make sense of their 401k plans. Many of them, and maybe, at some point I was also guilty as charged. Maybe I was also one of them, viewed their 401k contributions as, just another deduction that ate into their paychecks and their take home pay. And on top of that, they didn't fully understand how target date funds work. So I remember seeing my first, job. I logged into Fidelity. I saw a list of 25 funds. I saw that, my employer had defaulted my contributions to a certain target date fund, but I didn't understand a thing about how it worked. I didn't understand a thing about, where that money was being invested, what was the fees, who was managing it. I understood nothing. And I think most people don't know, how to optimize their retirement savings or make the best use of their 401k plans. So as Sunil explained, the benefits of employer matching, which kind of equals free money for you, and the long-term impact of consistent investing, how compounding works. Like if you invest $100 today, that earns you 10% every year. Over a period of like 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to compound into a lot of money, right? So he also realized, there was a deeper issue that most people lacked awareness. And it wasn't really that they weren't interested, but it was just too hard for them, to be putting their heads into how to invest and what to do. And he wasn't alone in noticing it. I and some other people who were part of the founding team, we also saw it first. And I have an HR background. There's another person, she has a compliance and risk background. So we also saw that, this problem was fairly widespread. And when we look beyond, our immediate circles, you can say that the picture was even more troubling for us. Like, even today, the studies show that about 25% Americans have nothing saved in their retirement plans. The numbers are starker for women and minorities. So women, for example, they outlive men for the most part. They face more employment gaps. That's, statistics and reality. I'm not making any of this up. There are wage disparities that, women at some point, may have faced in their careers. They play a larger role in, caregiving responsibilities. Again, I'm not stereotyping or generalizing. But despite this, retirement planning is something that they push aside and they deprioritize a lot because, they have a lot of like immediate things to take care of. So personally, it also became clear to me that the gap in financial planning was much, wider that we had imagined, much wider for women, much wider for minorities. And then, we had to do more. So the early prototype of Plootus, was an online 401k calculator and a recommendation engine. So users, could search their employer, provide minimal information, receive, personalized fund suggestions. So if your employer, if you search the name of your employer and your employer offers 25 different, funds where you can invest in, you can search your employer. Plutus will optimize, what are the best funds for you to invest in based on your demographics, your personal situation, your risk taking ability, whether you're a conservative investor or a, risk taker, and all of that. And we quickly also discovered that many users were hesitant to engage with robo advisors that ask for like too much information or personal information upfront. So what we designed was a simple, very intuitive experience that is delivered to create immediate value and provide like immediate inputs. As users grew more comfortable, they could securely link all of their financial accounts. And we created what we call a financial persona, like it's a visual representation of someone's cash flow, their spending behavior, financial health, like how much you're making, how much you're spending, what does that picture look like there are visuals that will show you all of that. And then the tool help them not only plan for retirement but also build better habits around budgeting, saving, just that financial wellness aspect of your life, which is missing for the most part for most people. And the recommendation engine is now patent pending, and it takes into account variables like someone's age, their status, marital status, cost of living, where they live, where they might want to retire, and all of that, inflation trends, to deliver a more personalized outlook. Now there are, if you search the internet and ask ChatGPT, there are a lot of, like, if you ask the question, how much should I save for retirement? I'm 35 years old. I make $100,000 a year. I have two kids or one kid. How much should I make? It'll tell you, like, there'll be estimates that you can get, but this is a more personalized view. And while Sunil, laid the foundation for Plutus, we wanted to be a very mission-driven company, and that puts financial clarity for everyone, and it's in everybody's reach. And I'm very happy to be a part of that journey.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think one thing, maybe we should talk a few minutes about is what you point out about women and minorities is, studies show that, women feel less empowered with their money. As you point out, there's still the wage gap, there's a wealth gap, there's, um, so many things. And the same for minorities. And so why do you think, that is? I mean, what do you think the root cause is from your perspective?
Um, there's plenty. There's many a reason for that. I think women also don't feel very confident about their ability to save, spend, invest. So there's psychological reasons too, and then in general, like you pointed out, throughout the course of their careers, face they they might experience more interruptions. That's just what the demographic studies tell us. They might be wage gaps, like you pointed out. They might be also, gaps in terms of if there is a caregiving decision, a responsibility, and the decision has to be made as to which, partner is going to take a step back in their career. It's usually the woman, and it's not just limited to certain countries or certain cultures. It's widespread across. It's if you're when you're starting a family, having babies, it's usually the mom that stays home, takes a few years of career break, and then comes back into the workforce. So those are, I think, the major reasons why retirement planning is not as easy and simple for a woman, or they need to probably think about it more, even compared to their male counterparts.
Yeah, well, I think you point out something, especially with caregiving, and we're seeing greater trends. Of course, everybody is familiar that, the mom usually gets maternal leave, takes time off, but sometimes it can be a drop in their career for a year to 4 years until the children are able to go to college, which is a huge, you know,
Right.
I guess gap, for lack of a better word, in earning power, while the man is getting, you know, their annual salary increase, the woman has to come back in at the same rate or even less, or working part-time. But I think the other end, the caregiving syndrome that we're seeing right now is taking care of the aging parents, is that it falls also to
Yes.
women in most cases to take care of aging parents. So it's definitely an issue from a lot of areas. So, with your background in this, is what advice would you give to women? Because they can't change that because they are going to be caregivers, but what can they do,
Yeah.
to help with their financial health?
Right. So one thing is what we tell, not specifically women, but specific to this, what we tell our users and even our friends and clients is even when you are out of the workforce for whatever reasons, whether it's your own personal health, caregiving responsibilities, parents, children, whatever the reason may be, don't stop investing. Like stay, think long term and stay, invested in the long term. So convert, for example, your 401k into a IRA and put aside, even if it's $100 a month or $5 a week, however you want to do it, just continue to put aside money and, create that bank. And then with compounding eventually it's going to grow. Like a lot of users and people came to us when the market was fluctuating a lot over the last like 4 or 5 months. We got a lot of interest from people. What should we be doing? Should we be investing or should we stop investing completely? So our again, I can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, but our advice was stay focused in the long term. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but what we know from past events is that eventually the market comes back and it touches new heights. Every time, there was a black swan event, eventually the market rebounded and it touched new heights, and that's what you need to remember. So retirement planning isn't something that just happens on its own, or you can't think just because I'm not earning now I have no money to put aside and therefore I should stop investing. Just because you're not contributing to a 401k plan, it doesn't mean that there are no other means for you to be thinking about your future and saving.
So, how would you define a black swan event?
Yeah. So black swan event is like a rare and unpredictable event that has consequences on how people start reacting to the market. So for example, the 9/11 terrorist attack, the 2008 financial turmoil, COVID-19, these are things that nobody had predicted. And then what tends to happen is that investors start panicking because they don't know what's going to happen. And to a large extent, over the last 4 or 5 months also, with the tariffs and the other uncertainty, there's been like some some bearings of okay what's going to happen, and people start panicking and they start taking their money out of the market, and they start holding the money and all of that. So all those events are called black swan events. They are rare, nobody can predict them, nobody foresees them, but eventually, like I said, what we know about any of these events is that eventually the markets tend to rebound and then they touch new heights.
Definitely. And so that,
The most important thing. I'm sorry.
oh no, no, that you're great. So I think what's important for people to, take away from this is to focus on their long-term goals. As you mentioned earlier, is, things are going to happen. We can look back over the last, not the next 20 years, the last 20 years, and see that there have been a number of these events, and look back over the last 100 years, and there have been numerous unexpected events. And we all know that's what life's about, and that's why we make plans. And as you point out, if you're investing for 20 or 25 years in the future, that is your holding period, not a year or 2 years. So you can wait out some of these events and let them play out. And as you point out, is over the long term, the market does recover. Of course, neither one of us is giving investment advice or making specific recommendations. That's up to your individual situation. But so that's my quick disclaimer on that for everyone. But that's a great definition. Appreciate it. So, one of the things is, of course, that you're bringing technology into the process. And how does technology enhance the financial planning process?
So, we believe that technology plays a major, major role in making planning, whether it's financial or any other, for example, financial planning specifically more accessible to the general public and to the general people. Now, today, financial advice is no longer limited to in-person meetings with expensive advisors. With digital tools, people can have access to financial resources. And simply, by downloading an app, you can actually get access to a financial planning resource nowadays. And these technologies have majorly transformed, advice into a more affordable and scalable service for everybody. Now, companies are using, and Plootus too, we are using AI coaches. We are making it easier for individuals to become financially savvy. These tools, can not only provide personalized guidance, they also help, people understand what options they have. They also help people make good decisions, and decisions that might be very unique to their situation. So it's not like, okay, follow the 80/20 rule, or you should have at least 80% of your income, whatever you make today, 80% of that is what you're going to need after you retire. Now, it could be different for different people, right? If you started late, or, if you had kids late, then even when you're in your 50s, your kids might still be in school and your income is not going to, like, expenses are not going to go down. Or, God forbid, if there's a medical event which you're not planned for in your 60s, then your expense might even be more. So very unique to everybody's situation. These tools can tailor the recommendations. And then there's also a knowledge gap. The biggest thing is the knowledge gap when it comes to financial literacy, and people feel very uncomfortable seeking advice, laying themselves bare in front of others. Oh, I actually don't have anything saved. Is there judgment attached to it? So technology kind of is bridging this type of a gap with platforms like social media, community messaging boards, Reddit, for example. They're offering financial insights and resources to a very wide audience, and making financial knowledge more accessible. And it empowers people a lot more than we ever imagined, and they can take care of their financial futures. And I feel like it's also very democratic in a lot of ways to use like a tool or technology, as opposed to trying to figure out through advisors, asking friends, and all of that.
Yeah, so on that note, is how does technology actually help with that democratization? Is it because it makes it more available to everyone?
Correct. And the same information is available to everybody, right? It's not like, I am privy to some information which you will not have access until, you pay, a certain cut or a percentage of fees to the advisor, right? Everything is readily available, readily there for you. And if you want to really, apply yourself, then you can, take a lot of advantage of those things.
Well, fantastic. And I think that's important because, you know, there's less women as that are financial planners, there's less minorities. So I have noticed that there are huge communities of women and minorities who are outside the usual financial planning system. So, with that said, just a quick question on that is how do people, find trustworthy sources? I mean, do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah. So you're right. Studies do show that, access to that unbiased financial advice, no judgment. Does she really understand, or does this, financial advisor really understand my particular, situation? Being that, I'm an Asian woman, there might be certain nuances that are very, very tailored and specific to me. I think, yes, studies are showing that unbiased financial advice through technology and through some of these tools like Plootus. I don't want to keep throwing the name, but Plootus and other financial technology tools, it has helped average households save 7.5% of their annual income each year. And financial well-being really means that an individual can meet their current and ongoing financial obligations while also securing their future. And that sense of security that you get, again, I'm not trying to advocate that you have to use tools or technology. You can use any method or way of getting more aware of what your financial future might look like. But that sense of security reduces stress and it promotes better mental health if you're doing so. And historically, I think traditional financial planning, has served wealthier individuals through those, face-to-face consultations. And, it leaves many others without any access to these crucial services. And by democratizing financial planning through, these tools, I think we can definitely ensure that more and more people, regardless of, what your background is, what even if you make $20,000, you can still have the tools to make informed decisions. You won't be guessing and second guessing yourself.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, one other question is, let's get back to the Plutus 401k calculator. Can you break down what is the Plutus 401k calculator and how does it help someone with their 401k planning?
Yeah, so it's a very, very simple calculator and a recommendation engine. What you do is you enter minimal inputs. It's going to ask you, okay, how much you have, even if you don't have the exact numbers, how much do you have saved in your current 401k plan? What is, your strategy? Like, are you a very aggressive investor, or you're super conservative, or, you fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum? It takes minimal information about your demographic, like if you want to enter it, you may. Age and what is your current age, when do you plan to retire? Again, nobody can predict how long they're going to live, or how long they're going to retire. I know many people who retired and then they unretired, given all the turbulence that's going on over the last two years at least. And they're still in the workforce. So but what is an estimate that you think you are going to retire? We have clients who are telling us that, oh, I believe in that fire concept, financial independence, retire early, so I'm going to save upfront in my 20s and I want to be done by the time I'm 45. So again, depending on how you input your information, and then it predicts how much you're going to. So let's say you're 35, the tool predicts, and you want to retire at the age of 60 or 65, the tool predicts how much you're going to need when you retire. So you say, I have $50,000 right now in my retirement plan. I make $100,000 approximately. You don't have to give the exact figures. I am 35 years of age. I plan to retire when I'm 65. The tool will give, and this is my, this is the company that I work for. So the tool is going to tell you, A, how much you're going to need for your retirement. It's going to estimate that. You can even tailor it to say that, okay, today I live in New York, but I plan to retire in, say, um, Salt Lake City, which, then it takes into, it factors in that difference in the location, and it predicts, how much you're going to need. And then based on your current employers, current 401k options that you have, it tells you you probably need, a super aggressive strategy. You might be, very conservative in how you are investing. So you might need to tailor your strategy to make it not, if not super aggressive, but at least, make it a little bit more aggressive. So you have like investing more in equity and less in bonds and all of that, because you have age on your side. So it gives you all those recommendations. And then, you can, it's up to you to take those recommendations, run it by your own financial advisor. Now, one of the things when we were, building Plutus is we didn't think that we needed to eliminate financial advisors. When I said, oh, traditionally the space of, financial advice has been limited to the wealthy. Our goal was not to, eliminate those people. In fact, we tell users you can bring your financial advisor onto a platform, and then we have a specific space for the financial advisors too, when they can bring their, clients to our platform and get, those tool based recommendations. So a financial advisor doesn't have to use those Excel sheets to calculate all those things. The tool will do it for the advisor too. So so it tells you it's up to the person to take the recommendation and make the changes. Now the other thing that the calculator also does is it takes into account, like the tool also takes into account what is the fee. So if you have like 20 different funds in your 401k plan, it not only analyzes this based on what is the performance the fund is giving, but also like what is the fees that you're paying into that fund. So that's also factored in into the recommendations.
Yeah, no, well, I think that's great. And I think it's great that, financial planners can use that because oftentimes they don't have as much information about the employer's 401k. And so they need to be able to integrate that to make a decision. So that's fantastic. So, let's switch gears. This is the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. These are three quick questions that I ask all my guests to help people change the way they think about money. The first one is, what money myth are you trying to break?
Oh, wow. I think one of the biggest myths about building wealth is that you need a high paying job to make it happen. I don't think you need that. The truth is, it's less about, how much money you earn. And it's more about, like I said, having that long term view, being consistent and being disciplined with your financial habits. It really comes down to making small, regular contributions to savings and investments that can compound and add up over time. Even $5 every week or $100 a month, whatever your goals are and however small they are, they can grow into something big if you're patient and you stick with it. A lot of times, people will tell you stories about, oh, if I, invested in Palantir 5 years ago, today, you would be sitting on a lot of money. And it's true, right? A big part of this is also simply spending less than what you make. Uh, we live in a world, where consumerism, instant gratification is everywhere. But if you look at, cultures that emphasize long-term thinking, at least, I come from an Asian culture, so there's a lot of like emphasis on long-term thinking and planning for the future and all of that. I think you'll see a different approach. And growing up, in a culture that values securing stability for the future rather than overspending and piling up debt, I can, certainly say that it can shape how we approach money. And it's really about, thinking long term and making those small, smart choices that pay down the road.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Is just being consistent. And as you point out, yeah, if you'd invest in Palantir, that would have been great.
Mhm.
But you and I could name hundreds of companies that would have turned out really poorly for people if they had invested in. So for
Correct.
every one that you go, wow, I wish I'd invested in that, there's hundreds that, a lot of us have invested in and gone, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have invested in that company, but you don't know, so
Correct. The
that's
diversification, being long, the thinking long term is the goal. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, let's get out the time machine for a minute. What advice would you give your younger self knowing what you know now about money?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that I made was I didn't start early. So, at Plutus, we say that be an early Eva, only because, the sooner you start, the more you benefit from that power of compounding. Simple interest, means earning on your initial investment. On the other hand, compound interest, allows you to earn interest on the interest itself. So, helping your money grow exponentially over time. So there's more, money that you will have if you start early, just by the logic of compounding. And over the years, like I said, we've seen a lot of, I call them black swan events, but we've seen a lot of like ups and downs, right? The dot com bust happened, 9/11 happened, the recession happened, there were wars, COVID 19. Each time, markets eventually recovered and they touched new heights. Again, like I said, right now also there's some turbulence and volatility, and people are very worried about their 401k portfolios. But the key is to stay invested for the long term. And instead of, fearing fluctuations, you see them as opportunities, probably to even buy more at lower prices whenever it fluctuates down. And know that, over time, it's going to bounce back, and the market does reward long-term investors.
I love that. The market does reward long-term investors. And, for people who listen to the podcast, they know I talk a lot about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, and, that's their whole thesis, and I don't remember if it was Charlie or Warren who said, my favorite holding period is forever,
Yeah.
when you look at an investment. So,
I'm very
that says
cliched
something.
when it comes to giving advice. I'm very cliched.
Yeah. So, to wrap up, what is your number one tip for changing the way we think about money?
So don't focus on the short-term gains, like Morgan Housel says in Psychology of Money. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. So shifting your mindset, from trying to outsmart the market to building like good habits, can change your financial trajectory. And it it's really the behavior that matters more than how much you know about you know companies, or how well you have invested in companies. um, I mean, I know people who attend every investor call before they invest in a company, and like you said, there might be still companies where your analysis might not work out the way you expected. So doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are, and it has a lot to do with how you behave. So staying in the term, understanding the power of compounding, diversifying, not putting all of your eggs in one basket. These are like very simple strategies that everybody can follow.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So, where can people learn more about you and check out the Plutus 401k calculator?
Oh yeah, so they can download the Plootus app um, on the App Store, and then there's also a website, Plootus.com, Plootus.com. The calculator works just fine on the website as it does on the app. And even if you don't trust anything, just go and try the calculator. Um, and even if you don't want to link up accounts, or don't want to create an account.
Well, fantastic. So, again, thanks for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate your time and insights. And thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. If this episode gave you any new ideas on money and technology, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. You can also join the Get Ready movement at tonystewart.com, my website, to receive the Get Ready newsletter and receive access to a whole bunch of free resources that I offer through the Get Ready movement. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.